I'm going to introduce Mardi Geimer, who is the past president of the Historical Society, who will talk to our distinguished panel. Thank you.
When I first came to Beverly Hills in March of 1990, I sat in this theater at the very first Historical Society meeting that I ever attended. And when I was sitting here, I was thinking to myself that this really is a small-town community and atmosphere. And I found out that part of the reason was because of the volunteerism that I noticed, throughout the community. I look around the room and I see continuing process of being involved. The commissioners, the committee members, Team Beverly Hills alumni, and all other volunteers. People such as Rudy Cole, who was supposed to be here. There he is. I'm sorry, Rudy. Leonard Horwin, who was elected to the Beverly Hills City Council in 1962 and was elected mayor of the city in 1964-65. He has been a resident of Beverly Hills since 1929 and has been a member of numerous civic, educational, cultural, professional, and charitable organizations over the past 5 decades. Mr. Horwin practices law in Beverly Hills and is recognized and honored as the Dean of Beverly Hills. And now I'll turn it over to the Honorable Leonard Horwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My advantage is in having a vision of the city that dates back that far and therefore has a possibility of encompassing much. Whether then or now, if any of us were to touch on the subject of Beverly Hills almost anywhere in the world, whether it's Asia, whether it's Europe, South America, Australia, the vision that people who admire Beverly Hills have is that of a unique kind of jewel city. Not a big city, not a city of yawning canyons, but a city of wonderful combination of splendid geographical, topographical features, mountains, vegetation, wonderful streets with trees fairly uniform on those streets. Unique business and a marvelous representation of almost every walk of business and including the entertainment industry with which it began. So that's the image of the city, and it has real value. The image has, as well as the reality behind it, both for the residents, and I'm not talking just in terms of dollar bills, I'm talking in terms of living conditions, quality of life, and so forth. The real advantage, something to preserve, something to work on, something to develop, because all life can't stop at any given point. It goes on. I would say, as far as my interest in the city as a councilman and mayor is concerned, it began with one of the most dreadful periods in American life. The period of the assassination of Jack Kennedy, the assassination of Robert, the period of the flower children, the dreadful Vietnamese War, the marvelous effort of a big, tall president to combine guns with butter without taxation, to go with it. But the city could have gone, the world could have gone in a negative direction for a lot of reasons. Very fortunately, it is not, and as of the present time, we live in possibly the most exciting era in the history of the world, and moving forward at a clip, geometric advance in occurrences and so forth, such as are unbelievable. This is a time of excitement, one we are fortunate to be in. And I think it's a credit to the city that to a very considerable extent, the people who have led it right up to the present time are matching the quality of the city to the world we live in. I would say that's the end of my 5 minutes. Right.
The next speaker is Frederick Leopold. Mr. Leopold was elected to the City Council in 1964 and re-elected to a second four-year term in 1968. He served 2 terms as mayor of the city from 1967 through 1968 and 1971 to 1972. Mr. Leopold is a partner in the law firm of Leopold, Fredrick, and Smith with offices in Century City. Mr. Leopold.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I was led to understand that I was supposed to give a little talk on what was accomplished during my regime on the council. Well, fortunately, I was on the council so long ago that there's nobody here that can refute anything I say, with the possible exception of Leonard, and he's spoken already. Having been on the council for 8 years, I'm a little allergic to speeches, so I'll make this as short as I can and list what I think were the major accomplishments while I was on the council. First of all, we instituted the city manager form of government. Before that, we had a general administrator who had no power really and was constantly groaning and moaning to the council about that fact. It's a big difference between a city manager, as Mark Scott can tell you, and a general administrative officer. Just one example, he can hire and fire department heads. Second, and this may seem petty to you, but it is important in the long run. We put in a whole series of new street lights in the city. They were these sodium lights, which are low maintenance, no painting, no nothing. And if I sat down with a fine pencil, I bet we've saved close to $1 million since those lights were put in some 30, 40 years ago, which every year we used to have a large expense changing the light bulbs, painting the standards, so forth and so on. Next, we put in a new sign ordinance which prevented and prohibited all projecting signs. Up to that time, many of you probably don't remember, they had projecting signs in Beverly Hills, were very unsightly. I think that gave a lot of character to the city. Next, we were the regime that instituted the automated garbage system, getting down to nitty-gritty. Before that, we had these garbage trucks running around with 3 men on them, so forth. Now I think they only have 1 in personnel, and we have an automated system. We put in the first ordinance requiring all used car lots, all gas stations, etc., to have landscaping of some kind to try and soften the impact. We acquired the final lots for the parking structures that you see now around the city. Those were all acquired, or most of them were acquired during our regime. For better or for worse, we acquired Greystone, put a reservoir up there. Some of you don't remember, but when Leonard and I were in office, the city was threatened with a freeway to go right through it. And it was only at the last minute, incidentally, that for better or for worse, that it was prevented. But we were able to line up the Bel Air Association because the Highway Commission said as an alternative route going through Beverly Hills, you can go through Bel Air. And the Bel Air Association became so agonized over that they put up a fund of many hundreds of thousands of dollars to architecturally draw designs for an underground freeway, which never came to pass. We completed the library that you now see over here. That, ladies and gentlemen, was, oh, I forgot one other thing. We instituted the architectural ordinance, which you may remember, which was the first, one of the first cities in the U.S. to have a ordinance which, in effect, gave architectural control, at least to the commercial section. So, you can see, and I think at the end of the regime, the city had more money, in our regime, Leonard, the city had more money in the bank than when we started. Anyway, that's what we did. Thank you.
Charles Arenberg was elected to the City Council in 1972 and served 2 terms as mayor in 1974, 75, and 1979, 1980. Dr. Aronberg, an ophthalmologist and surgeon, has practiced in the city for over 35 years, and he, along with Rudy Cole and myself are part of the Greystone Foundation. The Honorable Charles Arenberg.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
We won't fight.
Right. Everyone here, almost everyone, lives in Beverly Hills, and I think we've all experienced the phenomenon that when we're away from the city, out of California in the east or even in other countries, that people get very interested and excited to hear that you're from Beverly Hills. If you're the mayor, then they get super excited, and to them it's a big deal, whereas to you it's just the kid down the block. And another thing that happens outside the city, the farther away, the more it happens, is people have an idea that we have some large city of several 100,000 that really takes up a lot of space and has a lot of people. And if you tell them that we have 35,000, they're incredulous. And so many things happen and so much news comes out of Beverly Hills that they think it's some huge city. One of the things I've enjoyed the most about living here and working here is that it is a small town and the people are great, and I think we all feel like family. I know I do, and I hope that many of you do. As far as getting things done, it is almost never that one person acting alone gets a project through, especially in 1 year. So all of the mayors before you have received the cooperation and support of the other council members and the city staff, which has been excellent, and the residents, because without the backing of the residents, you wouldn't get anything done. And of course, everything is done for the residents and indirectly for through the business community for the residents. Some of the things that I'm most proud of are these. Probably number one is the program in which the city gives financial aid to the school district. That was not in existence until the 70s. It was a cornerstone of my campaign, and I remember well that people said, people thought it was a pretty good idea, but said it couldn't be done, it wasn't practical, it wasn't realistic, it wasn't legal, people wouldn't stand for it, and every other negative thought on it. But working hard, we were able to get it through. I think at the time, at the beginning in in the 70s, it was about $1 million a year, and I think it's grown over the years to 3 or 4 or 5 times that. Vicki Reynolds, council member, former mayor, was on the school board at that time, and she was extremely helpful in engineering it through the school district. So I think that was an important program. Probably on the same level was work with the police department. We've always had a good police department, an excellent force, but there was a time there when things were a little bit stagnant, and we're able to bring modern equipment and methods to the police force, which made it even more effective, made the officers able to do their work better. And as far as the size of the force, I always had an idea that we should have a few more police officers, especially people on the streets in patrol cars and unmarked cars and motorcycles. And our police chiefs have always been top caliber. However, usually they would, when asked, say that the force was the right size and we didn't need any more officers. Well, I just had a different view, and a lot of people thought so too, that we could use more officers. So every year for 12 years I would have a friendly discussion with whoever was the police chief at that time. This is at the council meeting, and we'd go back and forth and get a few more officers added, and I think that the police force was enlarged about 50%. Being a physician, the paramedic program was dear to my heart, and it was a good program. However, we were able to improve the equipment and training programs and personnel, and it became a model for paramedic programs throughout the nation, and representatives of other cities do come here to observe and take things back to their own cities. A few other things were the tree maintenance program that we have had in the city, and I think we all appreciate it here. And if you don't notice the difference when you drive around the city, you'll notice it when you fly in and you see a green patch there. That's Beverly Hills. The free parking program, I think, has been important. The residents like it, and it's helpful to the merchants. And maybe the last thing I'd speak about is the library. Fred mentioned that the library was built, and since then we've enlarged it, and it's really a model for cities around the country. And I've heard that cities 20 and 30 times our size don't have such a great library. So I think it's a jewel of the city. I want to thank the people for giving me the opportunity to serve. It was 12 years. I feel very fortunate to have done it. I enjoyed it, and I'm very grateful to everyone. Thanks.